We're back. Welcome to the PHNX Cardinals podcast, presented to you by the DraftKings Sportsbook app, America's top-rated sportsbook. Like, subscribe, leave us a 5-star wherever you get your podcast. I'm Johnny Venerable, joined as always, Bo Brock, Damien Anderson here on a Monday in which the Cardinals, thankfully, we didn't have to watch them struggle over the weekend, but I'm struggling, gentlemen, nonetheless, because, goodness, you look at the landscape of the NFC West, and records aside, it's a lot of meh. It's a lot of trash. It's a lot of unproven quarterback play, a lot of garbage QB play. So I pose this question to begin today's show, Bo Brock. Steve Keim, Kliff Kingsbury, they're sitting in their offices. They're sitting in their ivory towers down in Tempe, and they have their franchise quarterback, and he's healthy to begin the month of December, yet you are a singular game away from last place. Is this their fault, and why did they fail to take advantage? They couldn't even be around 500. This would have represented their best chance to win the NFC West since 2015. Now they've essentially wasted a lost year in this division.
I mean, it was wasted regardless. I mean, the circumstances change it up a little bit as far as the Arizona Cardinals, being third place in a division that's down. Like, They couldn't compete if most of the teams were just hovering around 500, which they kind of are. I mean, it looks like San Francisco can potentially run away with if they can get decent quarterback play. But no, I mean, I'm not sitting here and looking at this as a lost opportunity any more so than I was looking at it as a lost opportunity when the team, couldn't reach the 500 mark for the entire season. I mean, it's just they couldn't win a game on a week-by-week basis, put themselves in a position enough to just compete in a down division and just not even compete at all. I mean, I think that this team just had too many injuries as far as, were they put in a position to be successful? I don't think so. But to look at it as like, hey, the division's down, you should have taken advantage of it. No, it's like you just couldn't even field a team that was competitive with the rest of the league. I mean, the conference is down. The entire NFC is down.
Oh, Damien, Bo's making excuses, and I don't like it.
What excuse did I make?
I mean, but I think our own Howard Balzer put out some great notes in his article, Johnny and Bo, and he talked about the war of attrition and how there's only been roughly 5 guys out of the whole, 77 players have played, 5 guys have played in every game. And just the fact the turnover of this roster. And I think that some of that onus, Johnny, Bo, is on guys like Steve Keim for not addressing that outside linebacker, the offensive lineman, those positions where the team is wrecked. Not respectfully, but like 28th and 25th in the league, and overall, 31 as a team. And when you have a team and you build this roster, you got to assume some of those injuries are going to happen. Right. And we've seen other teams come into State Farm Stadium on the road. We saw 49ers, which I know that we'll get into with the local product, 7th-round pick Brock Purdy led their team to a win. We saw the Chargers come into State Farm Stadium with, backup offensive linemen and get it done. So to me, that's not an excuse about, injuries, right, Bo? Because that happens in the game. More so to me, it's not addressing where there's, blood in the water and where there's a huge need for it. Because, we haven't had – just using one example, I know Chandler Jones hasn't had the year that he's wanted, Johnny, in Las Vegas. However, but there hasn't been any production in terms of the outside linebacker defensive end position. And you can say young guys, whatever you want, but they haven't produced like you need for guys like in that position.
Yeah, well, they didn't even make an effort to replace Chandler Jones, and that's the most frustrating part. My argument, bar none, it's a quarterback league, right? And not every best quarterback is leading their division, but that's usually the formula for success. Producer extraordinaire Emma put this graphic together just to emphasize the shit show that is the NFC West right now. So Kyler Murray is healthy. He makes $230 million total. He makes $160 million guaranteed. He's a 2-time Pro Bowler, Rookie of the Year, first overall pick. This is who he's competing against for the rest of the season in the NFC West. And I preface this by saying Woldford is the starter for the Rams and has been for the past couple of weeks. So effectively, you're going to go into the season, Matthew Stafford missing half the season. Geno Smith, he's playing great, whatever. 32-year-old, and you got swept by Geno Smith, right? They're playing a 4th-place schedule, and they're taking advantage. Good for them. He makes a fraction of what Kyler Murray makes. He has a defensive head coach, and then, of course, Brock Purdy. I get it. You were smashed. You were destroyed. This is by San Francisco a couple weeks ago with Jimmy Garoppolo. This is San Francisco's 3rd quarterback. He was the last pick in the draft. He was Mr. Irrelevant. He's got 2 career passing touchdowns. Looking at this and thinking to yourself, we have about a quarter of the season left, and you're effectively out of the NFC West race. And this is not just a December thing. The Niners haven't had their starting quarterback since the start of the season. Now, you can make an argument Garoppolo is better. I've made that argument. But the Rams have never been right this year. The Seahawks were coming into this year universally picked to potentially have a top 3 pick, not from Denver, but their own. You're the team throughout all these teams that does not have Brock, the built-in excuses. Largely, Kyler Murray has been healthy. Yes, you've missed some pieces. I get it. War of attrition, blah, blah, blah. It's a quarterback league. Kyler's missed 2 games. You won 1 of them. And he's lost how many other? He's lost 7 games. Mm-hmm. He's lost 7 games in how many opportunities? 9 or 10? That's unacceptable.
I mean, I do kind of disagree with your entire argument. I mean, as far as the war of attrition and all that, I mean, it's been in the worst. Brock Purdy came in yesterday, right? I mean, for him to be on this list, we'll see how he does.
No, but the fact that
more
you
than the
have
sample
an edge
size
over San Francisco,
I mean,
now,
that edge was gone a long time ago. And that's here's my point about all this. As far as the biggest issue for this Arizona Cardinals team in 2022 is the step backwards that they took, the massive step backward that they took after winning 11 games, a playoff appearance. You know, at this stage in the Kliff Kyler era, you wish that this Cardinals team could compete against good teams, right? And they just haven't done that. That's been the biggest difference maker this entire season. It's like they're not losing to bad teams. The only bad team they've lost to, it was actually before the Rams completely fell apart. They still had Stafford. They still had Kupp. They had Aaron Donald in that game. They had Jalen Ramsey in that game. They lost to him in week 3 of the season. But this is the teams they've lost to. The Chiefs at 9-3, the Eagles at 11-1, the Seahawks at 7-5 twice, the Vikings at 10-2, the 49ers at 8-4, and the Chargers at 6-6, the only 500 team.
Hang on.
They're 54-30. That's the combined record of those teams.
If the Seahawks don't sweep you, the Seahawks are 5-7 and are thus a bad team. I think that argument.
If we're 5th, we'd be drunk, Johnny.
Yeah.
If we're 5th,
I'm drunk talking to Bo right now because I can't believe his argument.
But guys, you got to look at it. Woldford, I mean, whatever his name is, Woldford is a non-factor, really, because the Rams really aren't in it. You look at Brock Purdy. He's on a great favorable team for his skill set. He has to make a couple of throws. I mean, I love the kid, local product. Wish him nothing but the best. And you look what he has defensively. That defense showed why they're some of the best in the league, and they play complementary football. And they have the ability to run the ball. You look at Geno; he's completing the ball at 70%. I mean, when you do things like that and you're able to run the ball and you have a solid defense, Johnny, you're going to win some football games. I think the reality of the situation is the Cardinals haven't. We talk about snake bit injuries. We could go down that road, but it's also just executing. I mean, if you look at pieces and who's to blame, I mean, look at the offensive. The roster in and out of receivers. Different players, different parts. Tyler's been hurt. You have Rondale Moore. You have Hop's been out the first 6 games. I mean, it hasn't been easy for anyone associated with this team. They might just mark it off as, hey, the team's been snake bit. Let's keep it together for one more run.
I'm going to take you guys back to 2 separate seasons with this franchise, and you tell me the starting point and the ending point based on this precious war of attrition as it relates to quarterback and what the better teams did in the division with the better quarterbacks dating back 2014. Does everybody remember that? Cardinals were something like 9-1. They lost their quarterback. The other teams took advantage. They hung around, and the Seattle Seahawks went 12-4, and the Cardinals went 11-5, and they stole the division. They weren't the better team all year, but the Cardinals lost Carson Palmer and Drew Stanton. Then what happened last year, fellas? The Cardinals lost Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins and didn't have their shit together. And the Rams said, nope, we're fucking taking this division. And they played their best football with their quarterback at the end of the year. The Cardinals they're not even putting themselves in a position to do that this year. And that's what's so frustrating. Had they just played 500 football, it's teed up the rest of the year because everybody plays everybody else. It's cannibalized. The Rams and the Niners, the Seahawks, they all play each other. The Cardinals could not even keep their head above water with Kyler Murray, who makes $230 million. And now you've got a sea of backups and backups. You can't take advantage. That is my point. Good teams Keep it together. You don't let it's a sinking ship right now. Let's be frank with it. Bo and I
and sometimes they don't. Sometimes it's too much. And look, you wish you had the guy in place that could elevate your team at the quarterback position, at the head coaching spot, on just the entire coaching staff. I mean, if you want to make a case for BA's staff versus Kliff Kingsbury's staff in 2014, that's fine. I'm not going to argue with that. I think it's a pretty simple who has the edge as far as that goes.
I'm saying they have built an excuse. So do the 49ers. If the 49ers blow this division, no one's going to be pissed off. If the Seahawks blow this division, they're in a rebuild year anyway.
Guys, Bo, Johnny,
isn't it?
But isn't it about depth? Isn't teams built around depth and their ability to withstand this war of attrition that we talk about? If you go back to 2014, what did that team look like? I mean, if you look at it beyond the starters who are struggling, Johnny and Bo, what else do the Cardinals have? So if the starters are going out there and they're having problems, getting sacks, getting interceptions, rushing the football, throwing passes consistently for over 200 yards, that being Kyler Murray, then what's the expectations? If your starters are struggling, what's the expectations? How do you think that you're going to take advantage when there is no depth, coupled with the injuries that you've had all throughout the season?
I agree with that. Bo, I'll pose this to you. Do you think this makes it more difficult for Michael Bidwell to look Keim and Kliff in the eye? Because you have the built-in excuse. The Niners are rolling with Jimmy G. They're a top seed. They win the NFC. That's not likely to happen now. And now you look at, you couldn't even win a banged-up division. This was obtainable. Do you think Michael Bidwell looks at it like that, even because of the fact that they weren't able to keep their head above water and compete now and have meaningful games in December? Do you think that's an indictment now, more so than it was 24 hours ago?
No, but it plays a part of it. I don't think that they're even thinking. They went into the bye week at 4-8. They probably weren't even paying attention to what happened this week. They want to win a fucking football game. They're not worrying about, they're not sitting there in the kitchen looking at the big puddle of spilt milk and crying over it. I mean, they're trying to figure out how to win a football game at this point, how they're going to win games in the future, how they're going to make the best of this investment that they made this offseason and locking in Kyler Murray, as they should have, in a $230.5 million contract, and then figure out the best way forward. And if they feel like Kliff Kingsbury was the huge variable as far as why they fell so far from grace in 2022, then they need to figure out that between now and then. They also need to figure out who they want to come with them between now and the next offseason and going into the 2023 season. I just don't think to look at, Jimmy G going down and the division being perceived open. That's still the number one defense in the NFL last time I checked. It's still just littered with playmakers on the offensive side of the football. If you and I, Damien, can go back there and hand the ball off to Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, and compete in football games.
Well, that team also lost to the Broncos and the Bears. They got blown out by the Chiefs, just like the Cardinals. I do think there's some degree of, I'm Michael Bidwell. I'm sitting down, looking in the mirror. I'm thinking to myself, my coach couldn't win this division in this case. Like, Pete Carroll's not leaving. Kyle Shanahan's not leaving. Sean McVay, who knows what's going to go on with the Rams. Stafford may retire. That's a whole different situation. But if you can't win the division in a year like this, because we predicted it. We predicted all offseason. We said the NFC is going to be down. It's been worse than we thought. This division is worse than you thought. And your head coach couldn't be competitive in this division in this situation?
Yeah, I mean, Johnny, it's not a favorable mark. I mean, when you have a quarterback and paired with his head coach, and you're supposed to be the keys to success, that's the expectation. When you pay your quarterback over $230 million, the expectation is that you're going to be able to put up, 25 to 30 points a game. And I think Jordan P. talked about it in the comments section. He says the only difference between the San Francisco 49ers, which I agree with, and the Arizona Cardinals is that, they score the same amount of points, but the 49ers have a number one defense, right? So they can limit the blood in the water. And I mean, all those are truthful. And the problem isn't Vance. It's, when it comes to looking at production, it's your quarterback and your head coach. And it's either you're not putting them in the right positions to be successful, or they're not executing the right plays to be successful. And the fact that we can call out some of the plays over, Kliff's tenure with the Arizona Cardinals, I think that's problematic. We've seen him get creative, right, at times, but it hasn't been enough. And I mean, do you attribute that to injuries, or do you attribute that to just lack of execution, or just an ill prepared head coach?
it doesn't help to have an ill-prepared head coach. I mean, I think when you look at it, just completely take a step back and look at it put it entirely in perspective. I mean, Kliff didn't elevate anybody. Kyler came out of the gates unprepared and not ready to go. And his first 9 games of the season were brutal, right? And then you take, who was available, who was not. Your four out of your 5 offensive linemen are on the IR. You've got your top wide receiver who started the season on a 6-game suspension. You haven't been able to get your top 2 wide receivers on the playing field together until week 12. I'm not sitting here. There's not built-in excuses, and I don't think anybody's sitting there and saying, hey, this is the main reason we couldn't compete. But I'm not also going to look at this, hey, the division was wide open and they missed out on it. I mean, I think it's a little arrogant to think that they should be in this position with how poorly they've played this entire season. And that's the biggest issue. It's not that they're not taking advantage of a down situation.
But Bo, I don't think that's what Johnny's trying to say. I think Johnny's just trying to say, with that quarterback, with Kliff, with all these pieces, with the hop and this plethora of talent on the offensive side of the ball, like this was a great opportunity, for the Arizona Cardinals to be what was expected of them, to be a team that's high flying, scoring points in those flashes that we saw last year. I think that's what the frustration by the fans and by anyone associated with the organization is the fact that I think that everybody understands injuries, but when you see other teams winning football games with injuries, and it's all about, context, right? It's all about timing, Johnny. If these injuries happen at the beginning of the year and they get healthy now, no one's talking about it. But the fact that they haven't been able to capitalize, and we've seen remnants of, this offense that can, score, be dynamic, right? Kyler being dynamic. And that's something I want to throw out to you guys. Like, what would you give a grade overall, this year, to Kyler Murray being a $238 million man? Like, what type of grade would you guys give him this year?
C. He's been average.
I'm going to say C minus. Yeah. I think we're going to see his best football down the stretch here. But I think this analogy works out, right? At one point in our lives, Kate Upton and myself were both single people, right? We were both on the open market, but one of us was ill-equipped to even court the other one, right? That is not. You think I had a chance with? I appreciate that, but at some point, the Cardinals just had no chance going into the season. The way that
you can't pay your quarterback $230 million.
I understand that. That was my point.
I want to hear Bo expound upon this. Why was there no chance?
You can't say.
Why was there no chance?
But we also have the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. That's bullshit. Mm-hmm. I can't listen.
I just want to hear. I'm not disagreeing. I just want to hear not only about the Kate Upton story later, but I just want to know, like, why did they have no chance, Bo? Why did you feel that they had no chance going?
I feel like is when you look at it with hindsight being 2020, that is now, as far as the way that they operated in training camp, and sure some other variables played into it. Kyler had COVID. He also had, I don't know if it was an arm issue, a wrist issue. We never really kind of got to the bottom of what was really bothering him, but it took him out of getting reps in training camp. He obviously didn't play throughout the preseason. He didn't have really any starters play in the preseason. This team was ill-prepared going into the year.
But they've always done that, and that's the coach. And that's kind of my point. It's a reflection of leadership. And if this leadership couldn't take advantage of this dog shit division that is now watching backups among backups starting in the stretch run of the season, and you have largely had the quarterback that you've anointed, that you've given all this money to, you get an F. You get an F, and you failed. Now the question then becomes, do you let them fail again? How do you mitigate this from happening next year? How could Michael Bidwell sit in a room with Steve Keim and Kliff Kingsbury and they spin it to Michael, we need to keep our jobs because this is why it will be different next year. And I'm Michael Bidwell saying, Brock Purdy won the division. Geno Smith made the playoffs. They're starting 100 rookies. The Seahawks played like their 5th string running back yesterday and went on the road and beat the LA Rams. I know the Rams aren't great. I don't know. You think
starters on the offensive line?
Do you think the Rams are going to double down on this shitty season? No, they're going to try to come back and be competitive next year. How does Kliff and Keim sit in a room with Michael Bidwell and say, no, give us a mulligan here because this is what's going to be different next year? I don't think it's possible. I don't.
I mean, do you say that with LA? Bo, Johnny, do you say that with LA? Like Stafford's been hurt. Hey, we haven't been able to be consistent.
They get a full mulligan, 100%.
Well, they've got to figure out what the heck their future looks like. I mean, it's not as simple as we just run it. They better not think they can run it back
But
in
I mean,
LA.
but I mean, Bo, I want to throw this back at Johnny. But Johnny, why a full mulligan and you got the whole offensive line that has been rearranged 432 times?
I don't give a shit about that.
But Kyler can't block for himself. We've seen some of those games where he didn't even have a chance.
It's Steve Keim's responsibility to acquire linemen that aren't semi-retired. Right. Like Justin Pugh and Rodney Hudson. It's Steve Keim who should have drafted Creed Humphreys, who didn't. Listen, the tackle play's been fine. Josh Jones and Kelvin Beachum. It's really that interior offensive line. That's an indictment on Steve Keim. Now, you can say, well, that's not an indictment on Kliff. Okay, that's not Kliff Kingsbury's fault. But I'm sorry, their talent level is far beyond what Seattle is trotting out. And Seattle looks like they're on a different level offensively. What Geno Smith is doing, they should get all the accolades. And I put that tweet out yesterday kind of condemning Geno Smith. I'm not. I'm condemning this franchise for fucking around and thinking that they were just going to run it back and make the playoffs this year. And it was given to them on a silver platter with all these draft picks and all these high-priced veterans, and they fumbled it. And we're not moving off Kyler Murray. I don't think any of us three want to move off Kyler Murray. But the people in charge are just, you've blown it. I was watching yesterday. I'm just like, they should have won the NFC West this year. There's no excuse why you shouldn't have won the NFC West. None. Your schedule got easier as the year went on. We'll see how they do in the final stretches of 5 games, Bo. But they should have won it last year. And then this year, you had to beat a bunch of backups. And you can't even put yourself in a position to do it.
Well, now a bunch of backups. I mean, Jimmy G was the starter. Right? I mean, he was the best option at quarterback for them. I know they screwed that up throughout the offseason. He ended up staying there, but he's been their best option. Now he's done for the season. The Cardinals have them in the regular season finale. We'll see if they're playing for anything important. They're probably not with how the Eagles and Vikings are playing. They're not going to get a bye. Maybe they're trying to host a wild card game. I don't know. But we'll see what they do. Are they going to go after Baker Mayfield? That would be laugh out loud funny if he's quarterback for that team, or if Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant, continues to be that guy. One thing's for sure, we can all just kind of relax, maybe toss back a couple OG's gummies and have a good time continuing this conversation about the Arizona Cardinals and did they fumble the 2022 season in the NFC West, the chances at winning that. Maybe jump into the creams or the fruits. You've got the ratio that they got, the minis. You got your sleep edition gummy as well, which will help put you to sleep. Sometimes this offense would try to put us to sleep throughout the regular season for the Arizona Cardinals. Of course, the sleep edition comes in the aquaberry flavor. It helps put you to sleep and keep you to sleep. We love OGs. It's the perfect stocking stuffer as you turn your attention post-Thanksgiving to the holidays coming up here shortly. Go find at your local dispensary some OGs or check them out online at ogsbrands.com. That's OGEEZ brands.com. Get yourself some of their gummies. Someone who can use some OGs. We all know them. Go get yourself some. They'll love it. They'll love you for it. As always, find them at your local dispensary. You got to be 21 years or older. Also, be 21 years or older to enjoy some delicious Four Peaks beer. They've got their holiday packs out there. It's an adult's version of the Advent calendar. It's unbelievable. You've got a different beer for each day, celebrating as we make our way up towards Christmas. The reason for the season, plus some great Four Peaks beers. Enjoy beer specials when you hang out at Four Peaks. When you're hanging out with the PHNX crew, you can get it on the $3 kilt lifters or Wow Wheat pints. We're hanging out there every once in a while. I'm there just for fun, hanging out with my buddies. It's great atmosphere, great food, great beer. If you're looking for a game, you want to watch the Yotes, you want to watch the Suns, you want to watch some more NFL Sundays, go to Four Peaks, hang out, and give the gift of beer this holiday season. With the limited supplies, December's Advent calendar box for $55. Enjoy specialty beers, tall boys, and more. Purchase at their H Street Pub in Tempe.
Everybody do me a hot favor and like this video. Help share PHNX Cardinals. We're back every day this week, dropping a pod, dropping a video. And I want to talk a little bit about yesterday. So Sean Payton watch is continuing on. LA Chargers had a loss yesterday. And so the Cardinals, unfortunately, take an L. And so that continues on. Sean Payton, very much interested in rejoining the NFL next year. Will he be an option for the Cardinals if the Cardinals move off of Kliff Kingsbury? Bo, you brought up the idea potentially of Jim Harbaugh coming to the Arizona Cardinals. Now, he mentioned yesterday in a presser, which means nothing, that he's committed to Michigan long-term, but he attempted to dip his toe in Last year, the Vikings said no, which is laughable, frankly. Why would Jim Harbaugh be an option?
Why is it laughable?
That's laughable that the Vikings said no, thank you.
They've got 2 losses this season.
Okay, well,
they're doing all right, right?
They're doing all right.
He's fine.
They made the pretty good decision on that one.
No, we're gonna see what Jim Harbaugh has like 700 in the playoffs, in the NFL playoffs, but
right.
Jim Harbaugh
has been to a Super Bowl, and if it wasn't for, I would say, Beyonce's 45-minute halftime show, they may have won that. The
lights going out.
Yeah, the lights going out. I mean, just saying.
I mean, what he was able to do, he resurrected Alex Smith's career, a guy who was kind of labeled as a bust, his number 1 overall pick. What he did with Kaepernick and taking him and developing his game. He was the quarterback of that Super Bowl team, and a couple of years after that, he was really one of the better signal callers in the league. The idea of him doing that with Kyler Murray, it should get you excited. As far as, you have to look at it. I mean, the reason Ian Rappaport brought it up on his Twitter feed, he said, one of the names to watch out is Harbaugh, because the Colts job is open. And just like Michigan, there's somebody that Harbaugh played some of his professional years for. So, and you're going to have to compete with Irsay, who's willing to probably do whatever it takes if a guy like Harbaugh became available. So is it something that Bidwell wants to get in a negotiation into to outbid Harbaugh, or what's it, Irsay for that? I think that'd be tough, because the buyout at Michigan plus what he's going to command as far as his salary and the buyout you're going to have when you fire Kliff, that's a lot to get into it with.
He's a West Coast guy. He used to live in San Diego. Obviously, he coached at Stanford, coached for the 49ers. Like, hey, Jim, let's leave that Midwest weather. Come back out west. I think the Cardinals set up very favorably to that 2011, 2012 Niner team that he took hold of. Kyler Murray, first overall pick. That's a little bit underwhelming right now. That needs a reset. Not so much like Alex Smith, but I had people coming at me on
more like Colin Kaepernick. Colin Kaepernick. Yeah,
well,
that's
and
what I see
like
similarities to.
People were like, well, he only runs a pro-style offense. I'm like, no, they literally changed their offense on the fly into the pistol what Kaepernick ran at Nevada. Like, you tell me with an offseason he couldn't help Kyler Murray and merge the two styles together? Absolutely. It's what good coaches do. It's what Kliff Kingsbury should have been doing last offseason. They should have been using him under center more, booting out, that kind of thing. But I also look, defensively, the San Francisco 49ers think they're getting Vic Fangio back to replace D'Amico Ryan if he gets a job. You could swoop in, you could get Fangio with Harbaugh, give him these linebackers, and allow him to go after Jed York, because he is not happy about how things went down in the NFC West. And I know he's buddies with Irsay. That division is what it is, but you're never going to have the best quarterback. We think Trevor Lawrence is the guy. Houston Texans are about to have the first overall pick. Get Bryce Young, right? To me, you're in quarterback purgatory, and you're missing picks because you've traded picks for Wentz. You've traded picks for Matt Ryan. That job, that's a bad job. I'm sorry. That and the Broncos job are not favorable jobs. The reason that Cardinal fans should be cheering on the Chargers is they have Justin Herbert, and they've got an influx of cash because they live in Los Angeles, so they can maybe pay a little bit more if Dean Spanos wants to open up the checkbook, and they have all their picks. That's the situation the Cardinals are going to be in. The Cardinals are going to have disposable cash, but to your point, Bo, does Michael Bidwell want to pay up for a big-time head coach?
Johnny, why? I just want to throw this back. So why would he want to come to Arizona again? I mean,
West Coast, the team is talented. They have a quarterback. The Broncos are stuck with
Russell. You just made a hell of an argument for the Chargers.
we need the Chargers to continue winning. That's why it's important. Brandon Staley gets his act together.
Who do you guys think is a better fit, Harbaugh or Payton?
Payton.
Yeah, I think Payton's your guy, right? Just because he is truly available. He's not going to be somebody you're going to have to really pry away from.
And he has history with the team.
He has history with the team. Yeah, he's got his camp days, looking up at the stars, hanging out in Chicago, in Illinois. Probably got his first kiss while he was a ball boy. I don't know. Going way back. For whatever reason, people believe the nostalgia is going to open up the doors for the Arizona Cardinals. But sure, if you have an in, if you have access to him, then absolutely make it happen. Figure out what the compensation would be for with the Saints. But it's the same thing. Like, and Michael Bidwell has to be willing to pay whatever it takes for one of these guys, because I think, if either one of them is available, and if both of them, then you've got a good problem in your hands. you have to be willing to pay what it's going to cost to do it. Just like Kyler, keeping Kyler in-house, you had to pay top dollar for what the market was going to present his contract for. So he showed he was willing to do that. Now he's got to be willing to couple with him the coach that can take Kyler from good to great.
Michael Bidwell also has to feel the pressure of something that I don't think is talked about enough. You get a coach next year in this shit division with Kyler Murray. You need to be expected to compete and to win and make the playoffs next year. The expectations in 2023, you can't have a mini rebuild after a single-digit win season and a top 10 draft pick. When you have a quarterback that's making this much money, the expectation is back to the playoffs. Enough dicking around, enough screwing around, back to the postseason in the form of a wild card or hopefully the division. You can't hire Joe fucking Schmo, offensive coordinator from wherever, and think, I got a postseason berth ready to go. There are two coaches that can help you do that. Jim Harbaugh, who's a proven winner, ass kicker at every level, and Sean Payton. So if Michael Bidwell wants to be taken seriously and with his fan base, assuming they move off Keim and Kliff Kingsbury, and you get the fan base energized again to come and pack, God help us, State Farm Stadium, and you rebrand and you do all this stuff, but then you hire like Dingleberry, offensive coordinator from the Philadelphia Eagles, like you could easily be terrible again next year. There are guarantees on the coaching market in the form of Harbaugh and Sean Payton that everybody would say, yeah, I can see that. Yeah, definitely. You're going to make the playoffs next year.
Right. I agree, because I think what they have is a proven track record of being leader of men, right? And also having these professional relationships with their players, their quarterbacks, like where they're stern and where they're not going to take, less than 100% effort on and off the field for their team. And I think, what Payton was able to do with Breeze, or even when he didn't even have Breeze, when he was dealing with a bunch of injuries, when he was able to do with Teddy Bridgewater.
Always competitive.
Yeah, always. Yeah. I mean, they had some solid teams. And I think also what both of them would bring is something that Kliff never brought to the table. What BA brought to the table was he had relationships around the league, not just with coaches, but with players. And like when players went down, when you were seeking, like, you had to fill a hole on an offensive line, or you need a linebacker. It's like, oh, well, this guy's available. We know what he can do. He knows our scheme a little bit. Like, we never had that with Kliff here. Those guys definitely have it, whether it was, Harbaugh coaching at Michigan or his past jobs with San Francisco. I think that both those guys, if you can get one of those two guys, I think that's your best bet.
It's a franchise changer. You hit the lottery.
Yeah.
No, it is, guys. But I also have to think. You have to think about the context in which Kliff came into. When you're bringing a college coach into a professional football organization, Keim is going to be running the show. You know what I mean? He put together the coaching staff. He was probably in charge of player personnel. I guarantee you, Kliff is in charge of on-the-field duties, and Keim is in charge of off the field. And I guarantee you that's how the relationship was started. But if you get a guy like Sean Payton or you get a guy like Harbaugh, you're going to have to relinquish some of those duties because, to your point, Bo, Johnny, if you have a guy that has relationships across the league, you have a guy that has credibility, amongst his peers across the league, you're going to have to give up some of that power. And as Bill Parcells said, if you want me to cook but I can't shop, that might be a problem.
Well, and I think that to me, if I'm Jim Harbaugh, that's exactly why I don't want to go to Indianapolis, because that owner meddles. We've seen it. And also, like picking a quarterback, your options are going to be limited. You've used so many resources. Like, at least with Kyler is here. He's not going anywhere, presumably. And if you're sold on this job, then you're sold on Kyler Murray, and everything else takes care of itself. The roster, you can churn over a roster in 18 months, assuming you have the quarterback in place. It's a head coach quarterback league. Nothing else matters. Nothing else is even worth a point in Vegas. And speaking of gambling, my friends, I want to talk to you right now about my favorite year-long fantasy app. That's the Game Time app. And listen, I'm over year-long fantasy. Bo and I didn't do so well this year in our PHNX Fantasy Football League, but we are crushing it using Game Time because it is daily fantasy, single game fantasy. Whether it's football, whether it's basketball. I think with basketball, it's interchangeable. You can pick all the same positions if you want. You can bet on your friends, bet with your family, save up. Right now, Underdog Fantasy, it is so unique. It is so different. Like, will Devin Booker hit the higher of points? Higher or lower? You can talk about the no positional limits, which is great. Highest scoring squad wins. You win that cold, hard cash. Underdog does daily fantasy differently. Go get started. All you got to do is go to underdogfantasy.com, download the app, sign up with the promo code PHNX. Underdog is going to match your first deposit up to $100. And guess what you can do? You can be on Underdog Fantasy, and then you can go to the Cardinal game using the Game Time app and bet on, I don't know, Mac Jones against Vance Joseph. We'll see. But speaking of Game Time app, I'd love for everybody to download it. Check out tickets right now because you're thinking, okay, I want to get some cheap tickets. I want to go and have fun, but I don't want to pay all the egregious fees, the admin fees, the service fees that we're seeing with all these third-party vendors. Listen, Game Time's not about that. They're about helping your experience. Save up to 60% on tickets when you buy them last minute. The best way to support us is by buying your tickets through the link in the description. Listen, when the Cardinals were relevant earlier this year, you could get tickets on the 50-yard line for as low as $120. Think about how much they're going to cost or how little they will cost against the Patriots on Monday Night Football. Are we calling this Mock Draft Monday, Bo? Or are we gonna trademark that, or has that probably been taken already?
Yeah, I think it was taken a long time ago. But we'll play ball with some Mock Draft Monday, because at 4 and 8, what else do we have to do? Even though the conversation has been great and everybody's been killing it in the chat all day long. Yeah, let's get into. We'll just do. Obviously with the Cardinals at 8th overall, it's a little bit easier. The prospects that they could pick are few more available at 8 than where they were at 23 when we all started kind of working together. So I figure it might be fun, maybe add some hope to some Arizona Cardinals fans' hearts out there.
Yeah, and let's do this. Let's rotate the three of us. We've got 8 selections. I thought we would go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, and 2. And Bo, you want to kick us off with the Houston Texans picking first overall?
I think that the Houston Texans, obviously they need the quarterback position. They moved off old long neck Davis Mills in favor of Kyle Allen, and that was brutal going against their former quarterback on Sunday. Did not look great. They're going to go with a QB. They're going to have a pick of whoever they want. We saw Anthony Richardson put his name in there today from Florida. Big-time prospect.
Stop it, bro.
I don't think you can get away from Bryce Young of Alabama. I think he's the top guy, right?
Agreed.
Yeah, for sure.
Bryce Young.
All right, Damien.
Bro hugging Goodell, number one.
Damien, you're gonna get our hometown Bears. Damien and I are both from the
hometown Bears. Okay. Yep. And you need somebody to protect that quarterback, Johnny. They just got him doing too much. The thing about it is, I don't know if the kid from Northwestern, Skoronsky, I don't know if a number 2 overall. I know that he had some amazing PFF grades.
You would know. You as a Northwestern grad, you're on the street. You're on the street.
I mean, I would say, why not? We're going with Skoronsky, offensive tackle, Northwestern.
All right, staying in the state.
That's quite the development for the Seattle Seahawks, who are picking egregiously 3rd overall because the Broncos can't get their shit together, and they are gifted Will Anderson 3rd overall. That is horrendous news for this Arizona Cardinal franchise. Alabama, Buckets Award winner, Defensive Player of the Year, blah, blah, blah. Having a little bit of a down season compared to last year, but still an elite blue chip prospect. Goes to Pete Carroll, gifted to Pete Carroll for a defense that really doesn't have a great pass rush to begin with.
She's saying the Bears should have got. Are you trying to tell me the Bears should have got Will?
No, I think the Bears are a new trajectory, which is an offensive team. You don't trade Robert Quinn and Roquan Smith. I know they were older and you weren't going to pay them, but I feel like the Bears are going to go all in on offense, and I like the idea of protecting Justin Fields.
All right. Way to make me feel good, John. I appreciate it.
This is where it starts to get fun, because who should be picking at 4 isn't picking at 4 because they mortgaged the future. It worked out. They got a Super Bowl, but the Rams pick goes to the Detroit Lions back in the is that part of the Goff deal?
It is.
So they're on the clock at 4 overall, and I think they'll probably go with the next best quarterback available, right? There's a couple of exciting defensive players, but is it C.J. Stroud? Is it the kid from Florida that I mentioned, Richardson? Is it Will Levis from Kentucky? I think they probably go with C.J. Stroud instead. Up there in old Wolverine country, they're going to have a Buckeye playing quarterback.
I like that a lot. I love C.J. Stroud on the turf at Ford Field. And I think we get quarterbacks that are going to be a hot commodity in
I think they're going back to back, and whoever, if CJ wasn't there, we were going to pick, Will. We had them both graded around the same. You guys know the problems that we've been dealing with the Carolina Panthers at quarterback. So it is what it is. We're taking the kid from Kentucky, Will Lewis.
Will Levis, who's got just some horrific arm tattoos. Look it up. Just kind of a
He also puts mayonnaise in his coffee. That's a red flag for me. I don't want a quarterback that does that.
Philadelphia Eagles have the Saints' 6th pick because the Saints are now poorly run without Sean Payton and traded up. I think they traded for Chris Olave, who's a nice player, but now they're terrible. And so the Eagles have their pick. And I think, I think they double down on protection for Jalen Hurts. I like Paris Johnson Jr., tackle for Ohio State. They've got some age on right tackle, and I think that it's a predominantly run-blocking team. They don't need receivers. They don't need defensive linemen. Maybe they could add a corner here, maybe, but I think take the second-best lineman available, and I think they're in good shape. Lane Johnson is a phenom, but they could get younger at tackle.
Jacksonville would be on the clock next. Do they go wide receiver? They try to couple their guy Christian Kirk with somebody. They help out Trevor Lawrence. Do they get somebody on the offensive line? Do they go defense? Because there's a Georgia defensive player that's a top 5 type guy, and Jalen Carter that's available. Let's have a little fun here and give him a wide receiver. Jigba just put his name in the draft, right, from Ohio State. Let's just go with him. Yeah, he'd be a great compliment.
Thank you, Bo, because we're going. The Arizona Cardinals need help with all some of the best offensive lineman help taken early on. They're taking Jalen Carter, D tackle, Georgia. No question.
I love that.
They need help.
Trayvon Walker went to the Jags last year from Georgia, and he hasn't been lighting the world on fire. So I don't think they double up with Georgia front 7 players back-to-back years. I think that's a good
fair.
Fight.
That's fair.
The Cardinals are desperate for SEC talent, SEC defensive linemen. You couldn't go wrong. You could take Jalen Carter, or if you can stomach more Clemson front 7 defenders, they've got 2 supremely gifted defensive linemen in Brian.
Do you look at corner? What do you guys? So let's just go position.
Yeah, I just said it was my pick. I picked Jalen Carter.
I know.
That's the right pick. That's the right pick.
Okay. All right. So you want interior defensive linemen.
I want an offensive line. That's what I want. But we got to go. What's been the method of the past? They've picked best available, and it's no question that Jalen Carter, if he makes it to 8, is the best.
Zach Allen's a free agent. JJ Watt's a free agent. You have no pass rush. You got some kids that you're excited about. It has to be a defensive tackle, a 5 technique that can rush the QB, or it's got to be an edge rusher.
That helps the linebackers too.
If I'm prioritizing just position, because obviously we went best player available, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I'm prioritizing position, I think I go edge, offensive line, and then interior defensive line.
But what? Okay.
Your tackles are
that same pick. Hold on. That same methodology, but where would you go? That same methodology. Look,
if you got a top 5 guy who slides to you at 8, I think that's I can't argue with that. But if I'm looking at the next edge available, I don't know if you're looking at like the kid from Notre Dame, Isaiah Foskey, or if you're looking at Miles Murphy, the edge from Clemson that Johnny mentioned. You got Tyree Wilson from Texas Tech. Do you fire Kliff Kingsbury and bring a Texas Tech guy in after he leaves?
Oh my God.
I think edge. It's been such a disappointment this season. Sure, you've got 4 sacks between Cameron Thomas and Majay Sanders. That's encouraging. They can be rotational guys, but you need a game changing type guy.
You need a guy. You need a guy.
Yeah, you need a guy.
You need a blue chipper. And I'm with you, Bo. They need to upgrade the offensive line. They're not going to do it with the 8th pick where they can.
Like interior, yeah, I wouldn't go interior there.
We've seen that play out with Jonathan Cooper with Megabus, right?
Skoronski might be there. Skoronski might be there at 8.
Well, listen, and if Sean Payton wants Skoronski, then that's who he'll have. But
weren't they notorious in New Orleans for going offensive line?
Yeah, and they'd play Skoronski at guard the first year and then kick him outside. But they just signed, the Cardinals did, DJ Humphries to a long-term extension. Now, it's not too favorable right now because he's out potentially for a while. But then Josh Jones is going to start, you would think, next year, unless he falls out of favor. So we're going to try to do this every Monday because what the hell else are we going to do with this team unless they start winning? I heard somebody say in the chat that if they win out and the Niners lose out, Cardinals could win the division. That's interesting.
Wow. Can you imagine? I can't. I'm not even going to let myself do that because I've been disappointed so many times. But we're actually going to be doing a game preview at this time next week because it's a Monday night game against the New England Patriots. And this is my hot take that I'm going to deliver here on this Monday, December 5th, 2022. I think the Cardinals win the next 2 games and go into Christmas at 6-8. I think that they beat New England and Mac Jones, and I think that they're going to beat Russell Wilson and the Broncos in Denver, and then they're going to take on Tom Brady on Christmas at 6-8. I don't know if that does anything for anybody, but I just feel like that's how it's going to go.
I don't care to comment on that. But you can bet on those games right now on the DraftKings Sportsbook app. And listen, do you use your money how you wish? It's like Christmas morning every day with DraftKings. You can get boosted parlays like tonight, plus 100 if you bet at anytime touchdown for Mike Evans or Chris Godwin. Listen, Cardinals money line, you can get plus money on this team right now. Patriots are a slight favorite, -1, -1.5. All you got to do, download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use that promo code PHNX. Get this, place any $5 bet on any NFL team to win their game. You get $150 in free bets back if they do. That's only, though, at DraftKings Sportsbook, only with PHNX. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details. My DraftKings pick of the week hit over the weekend. It was the Texans. It was the Browns under. That was a gross game. But, yeah, it's a great time to be on DraftKings. We've got culmination of college football, all the bowl games that are coming up. You know, you love to gamble on those. College basketball is in full swing. We've got the World Cup still going on, although the USA's out. You got NFL action. I mean, it's just NBA, of course, almost every day. What better place to be than DraftKings? Well, I will tell you, go to gophnx.com. Become a diehard for the year. You will not be sorry that you did. You can cop a free shirt every year you're a diehard at gophnx.com via the PHNX merchandise locker. I'm still a fan of the Hollywood Hills sign on top of Camelback Mountain. You absolutely love to see that. Damien and Bo mentioned the many work of our talented peers, including Howard Balzer, who's got a banger of an article now that you can read for free. GoPHNX.com. But if you become a diehard, you get event discounts. You get exclusive member Discord access to hang out with Bo and I as we bitch and complain about this team. Nonetheless, go to GoPHNX.com. Become a diehard member. You will not be sorry that you did, Bo.
No doubt about it. I think Howard Balzer's complete breakdown of how we got here for the most part is pretty masterfully done. You can check it out. As Johnny said, it's unlocked. Also some great locked stuff that you're going to want to become a diehard for. But Cardinals back on the practice field come Wednesday. We're going to talk to Kliff and a couple players tomorrow. Team will return from bye and hopefully recharged after the last time we saw this team. They were getting beat by the Chargers, a 2-point conversion in the end zone, or after scoring to go up 25-24. So, but it's been fun. It's fun. It's fun to get back on the mics with you guys, and we've got 5 more games to go. I said the next 2. Anybody want to make? You got any other bold predictions for the rest of the season?
I think we're going to see some benching of some high-priced veterans to finally get the rookies in there, to finally get young players playing. I don't want to see. I don't have any interest. I'm sorry, Marcus Golden. I think you're about done for the year, and I'm gonna let the tape do the judging in the offseason. I would play Maze Sanders. I would play Cameron Thomas the rest of the year, because if I'm Vance Joseph and I'm auditioning for other teams, I want to play the young players, and I want to show them that I can develop young players. So, there are too many high-priced veterans that are not getting it done for the Cardinals. Damien, that's where I would start in these final 5 games.
I think that they're going to give the vet guys just what they've done, an opportunity to go out on the right foot, right? Like, hey, you got to play yourself off the position. Not that they haven't done that up to this point, but I think the next 2 games are definitely winnable games. And if you, in any way, shape, or form, come up short against the Patriots, who can't matriculate anything offensively, and as we all know, a Denver Broncos team that's struggling horrifically. If those 2 don't happen, and like Bo says, you can't get those 2 wins, then I see a complete 180. Bo and Johnny, and they're just trying to, play anybody and give everybody an opportunity to get out there and play so they can evaluate for upcoming 2023.
We are in Black Monday watch, gentlemen. Exactly 5 weeks from today is the first Monday outside of the regular season. It's not the first Monday of the offseason, but the teams that don't qualify for the playoffs will make changes to GM and head coach beginning on Monday, January, I believe, 9th. So 5 weeks from today, it kicks off. Will Keim, will Kliff still be a member of the Arizona Cardinals? You know where to keep it locked in for anything and everything with this franchise. For Bo Brock, Damien Anderson, I'm Johnny Venerable. Subscribe to the PHNX Cardinals podcast wherever you get your podcast. Like this video, subscribe to PHNX Sports on YouTube. We're back, Manana, audio only podcast. We'll see you there.